Hello, I'm Kim Castiglionis, Marin Women's Hall of Fame honoree, class of 2013. It is my pleasure to sit down with this year's class of Marin Women's Hall of Fame inductees to learn about their lives, careers, and the journeys that led them to be honored in this way. Since 1987, the Hall of Fame has inducted over 160 Marin women of distinction, women who have made immense contributions to the County of Marin and its residents, as well as the world beyond. Honorees have distinguished themselves in many fields: education, science, business, philanthropy, the arts, politics, law, philosophy, and religion. Each honoree has been a force for positive change in our community. It is a great privilege to acknowledge and document their contributions. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Susan Gilmore, who is being honored in 2025 for her pioneering work for education. Welcome, Susan, and congratulations.
Thank you, Kim. It's great to be here with you.
So let's start off by having you reintroduce yourself and sharing a little bit with us and the audience about your work.
Sure. Well, so Susan Gilmore, and I am the founder, president, and CEO of the North Bay Children's Center, which we started in 1986. And our mission is to ensure that all children, particularly our most vulnerable, have access to high-quality early learning experiences that lay the foundation for lifelong success.
That was well spoken and articulated in a very succinct manner. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the exciting things that are coming your way at the Children's Center. But in the meantime, talk to us a little bit about your upbringing and what helped to shape who you are today.
Sure. So I'm a native San Franciscan, and in fact, my mother, my 94-year-old mother, still lives in the house I grew up in San Francisco. And I had always been interested in my goal was to be a teacher growing up. And I believe my very first classroom that I operated was in the attic of our home, where I took a walk-in closet and I turned all of my parents' suitcases sideways into desks for my neighborhood children. And I was about 10 years old when I did this, and I bribed them all with Girl Scout cookies to come to my school. And I had a little alphabet all handwritten on the wall, and I had a little chalkboard and my erasers and chalk, and I actually taught a couple of them how to read before they started kindergarten. So their parents really liked my little school. And I remember making library books and making little cards in all my books with little library cards. So this was, my destiny. It was certainly a calling from a very young age. But I was a preschool teacher, and I was a preschool teacher in the early 80s. And this was a time where most children attended preschool maybe half day, and then moms would pick up after playing tennis and then go home, and they'd have lunch, take a nap, and that's the end of their preschool day. And then things started really changing in the 80s. And we all of a sudden saw property values skyrocketing in the Bay Area, and women were returning to work shortly after giving birth because families really relied on dual incomes to be able to live in the area. And there was a huge need for not just preschool, but full-day, year-round childcare for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And that was the beginning of the North Bay Children's Center.
Outstanding. Was there anybody, and yes, apparently it was your destiny to do this work, but was there anybody in your life that helped influence your career?
Well, I should, back up a little bit about how I started this. I went through the College of Marin Child Development Program, and my very first student teaching position was in a program in San Rafael. It was in the basement of a building. It was subsidized for very low-income families, and the teachers were purchasing, they were using their own money to purchase educational materials, and it was a great program. And then I was hired to work in a private preschool that was very well-resourced. It was a community that cared deeply about their children and invested in the facility and programs, and these parents could pay whatever it cost to have the very best care for their kids. And the whole time I was there, I kept thinking, if only these children over here had access to what these children here have, it would be wonderful. And I had a mentor at the time, Ethel Siderman, who was working. She had started a child care center in Fairfax, and I met her while going to Dominican. And when talking with her about what I was observing, and if I felt some of the inequities in the child care industry in our county, she was really encouraging when I talked about a vision for starting a child care center that was culturally diverse and economically diverse, and that would meet the quality standards of the program where I was working. And she was very encouraging, as well as my college professor, for you could do this. This is a great idea. This is needed. And they helped me identify the path to make this happen. So I'd say it goes back to Ethel for sure.
Excellent. I know that the North Bay Children's Center has really expanded over the years. Can you walk us through some of the more pivotal opportunities or areas where you thought you saw a need, and you just, no matter what people were going to tell you, you were going to make sure that the community had the resources that you thought that they deserved?
Sure. So, what was most important was care for infants and toddlers. I mean, we were one of the very first center-based infant toddler care programs in northern Marin. And this was coming at a time where there was a lot of conversation on the state level about welfare reform. And if there was a desire to get women back into the workforce, many of these women that were on welfare were young single moms that couldn't go back to work or begin a career because they didn't have childcare. So affordable childcare was, very much on the forefront of what our legislators were thinking about at the time that we started North Bay Children's Center. So right when we opened our doors, it's when federal dollars were made available for subsidized care. So we were able to get these state contracts to provide full-day year-round care for low-income infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And so that was really important, because that helped us really look at being able to have that economic diversity in our program. That was so much of what I was looking to do, and it was a way to be able to do that. We originally opened our doors in Novato, serving 60 children, and then at that time, close to 10 years into our operations, again, the property values were going up, rents were going up, and we were leasing this facility, and our rent tripled, and there was no way that we were going to be able to afford this. And at that same time in Novato, Hamilton Airfield was officially closed. So it was a military base that was primarily just housing, but there was an opportunity for the city of Novato to go through this base reuse plan. And then Cynthia Murray, who was on our city council, and then county supervisor, was always an advocate for affordable childcare. She understood as a working mom, a single working mom. And she helped North Bay Children's Center negotiate a land lease with the Navy at Hamilton Field so that we could relocate our programs without having to close. We had been, we weren't going to be able to afford rent. We were talking about cutting our infant program. And so she was very instrumental, and another one of my mentors, who helped negotiate that land lease with the Navy and acquire that space that we now have at Hamilton. So we relocated. We were able to, we brought in portables. We had 1.5 acres of land. We were able to more than double our capacity. Then at that time, I'm raising my own family, and I was a volunteer in my children's school district. So I raised my children in Petaluma. And I was the co-chair of the Petaluma City Schools parcel tax many years ago. And it was during that time that the superintendent understood what I did for a living, and there was an opportunity to open a preschool program at one of the school sites up in Petaluma. And that was an unusual model, was to have preschools or childcare on elementary school campuses. But they, in fact, invited North Bay Children's Center to do before and after school care on this one campus in Petaluma. And we got up there, and there was already a school-age program on that campus, and they really didn't need before and after school care, but there was an opportunity at the state to apply for subsidies, for contract dollars for preschool. So I convinced the district that this is what they wanted. If they wanted to, this was a school that was a low-performing school that really wanted to change their test scores at that time. And it's like, if you really want to move the needle here, you would be able to do that if you had preschool. If these children who were entering kindergarten had that preschool experience before they started kindergarten. So they said, okay, well, fine, okay. So we start this preschool program, and after the first year, the majority, let me back up, the majority of the children and families in this attendance area, English was a second language. And these children started our program. The parents were very engaged, because that's part of what we did. One of the most important things we do in our programs is the parent engagement piece. And by the time they graduated, we had 40 kids graduate, start kindergarten, all speaking English. They were all at grade level. The parents were already engaged in the program, so they were all room parents. And I'll never forget, I was in the parking lot, and the principal was tracking me down. He was like, wait, we need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, what did we do? And she said, okay, we're the first week into the new school year, and we're already bringing a first grade curriculum into this classroom where with these kids that just graduated from your program. It's like, how many more portables can we get for you? How many more kids can we have you enroll so that we could have this outcome? So that was, that was the beginning of our expansion in Sonoma County. So, we are now at 14 locations, and that wasn't the original vision, but I think that part of what I feel like I, in my leadership role, bring to the organization is the ability to continue to respond to what the changing needs of the community, for children and families. Like, what do they need? What's changing for them? And what can North Bay Children's Center do in those communities to prepare these kids to be successful? So once we started that program in Petaluma, then Santa Rosa City Schools heard what was happening at McDowell and Petaluma, and I got a call saying, can you do this? If we could get state funding, can you do what you did in Petaluma at McDowell? So, and then that went from Santa Rosa with 2 locations, then we're in Hillsburg, we're in Sonoma Valley, we expanded in Petaluma, we've expanded in Novato, and so we're really, with that expansion, those programs are co-located on school campuses. So we've embedded, these preschool programs into these schools. And for the children and the families, it really just feels like a continuum. They start at age 3, and they're 2 years with North Bay Children's Center, then they go into now TK or kindergarten. So it really makes for a wonderful transition from preschool into that school community. They're already part of that school community. And now what we've done is looking at, again, pivoting a little bit. We look at the elementary schools are now serving 4-year-olds. They're providing TK. They're looking at, 4-year-olds, eventually maybe even 3-year-olds. So now what we've been doing is bringing state subsidies, applying for state funding and securing those contracts, and expanding infant and toddler care into those locations so that we could start children even sooner than 3 years old. And that's what we've been doing right now with our expansion in those areas.
Well, it is not the only thing you are doing. I understand there is a resilient hub underfoot, and perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure, our resiliency hub. So, I mentioned the campus that we have at Hamilton Field, so that's our headquarters. So that campus is the hub for all of our other locations. And we, years ago, again, we relocated, we were leasing that land. We finally, we have title of the land, and now we received title close to 30 years ago. So from the federal government, they transferred the land to North Bay Children's Center for $1. And it was because an acre and a half because of the population that we serve. And we had portables on that land. So the portables, they have a lifetime. They're not meant to be permanent facilities. And so in 2012, we actually set out to replace those portables with permanent construction. So fast forward, so I've been doing this since 2012, this facility. So we were able to get our permits in 2018 and then right ahead of the pandemic. So this was a facility that will build out the entire acre and a half, so we're more than doubling our capacity there. So we'll be able to serve many more families who need childcare. And this was a project prior to the pandemic that was $7.5 million. And now post-pandemic, it's $12.5 million. So I'm really excited to say that it's out of the ground. We should have temporary occupancy by the end of January, then permanent occupancy by spring 2025. But what was happening while we were doing this design over the past 5 years is, we were looking at all of our experiences with and impacts from the fires, the pandemic, and how was this impacting the childcare community in our schools. And we know that optimal child development is dependent on stable communities, stable families, and stable schools. And we know that when disasters happen, it can destabilize all three of those elements all at the same time. And we've seen that firsthand, especially during the fires. So we were able to look at what we learned during this period of time and what can we build into this new facility that we're designing. It's not under construction yet. What design elements can we include that would ensure our programs don't close? Because we know that when the pandemic started, when fires were happening, everything closes down. And that's when children need their school to be open. And that's when they need to be in these environments that are nurturing, that are predictable, that are addressing all the trauma that we're all going through during those situations. And so we've designed this new facility to be what we call a resiliency hub, where when those kinds of events occur, that the center stays open. It could be where families gather, where children are kept safe, where teachers could gather if they are without power, without heat, power, food, water, anything that they need, a home to be able to stay safe. That this center will be that place for those children and their families and teachers in our community.
So all of the things that you've done throughout your career have been a cakewalk, no doubt. No trouble, no obstacles, nothing like that to stand in your way. Can you share with us, really, what is your philosophy and approach to challenges? Because working with the federal government and with county and then state, there's got to be a few hiccups along the way. How do you deal with those?
Well, when we were trying to transfer the land to North Bay Children's Center, or secure that space, every time you thought that you had a yes from somebody, there's somebody higher up. It's like, okay, do I need to go to Washington, D.C. and sit down with the President of the United States to be able to get this approved? But it was like pushing noodles at the time. And it requires a lot of patience and persistence. And the whole idea of even, being able to secure that space. I mean, I remember meeting with my board of directors and, trying to figure out what we're going to do if we have to leave where we are. And it's like, well, Hamilton Field is close. And I mean, everybody's like, you can't do that. So I think a couple of things that worked for me early on is, number one, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you can imagine it and you could think it, it's somewhat doable. You just have to find the yes people. And for me, for my success, it was surrounding myself with people who knew how to make things happen. If there is somebody at the table that's going to be an obstacle, it's like, okay, I got to move around this. I got to get the people at the table who share the vision, who say, yeah, there's a way to do this, and we're going to make it happen. So persistence for sure. I mean, with this capital project, again, 2012, and we've had, it's such an amazing moment for our organization, our board of directors, all those people have been involved in it since then, to really, to hold that vision and stay the course. The architect that we were working with said recently, he said, most child care programs just don't have the staying power or ability to do this. It's surprising that at one point you just didn't bring portables back to the site and say, okay, we're done. We can't keep doing this. There's too many hurdles. And it's true. For every time I raised $1 million, it went up $1 million. It's like,
keep up.
This guy can't do this, but we did. And I remember when the board said, how on earth are we going to raise $7.5 million? It's like, we've almost done it twice now. So yeah, but it is, I think being able to be in the community and articulate the importance of the work that we're doing, why it's important, why invest in this, how this is going to benefit our community for generations to come. And we have people that are very extremely generous. We have, the pandemic was part of the issue for us, which caused the escalation of the cost of the new campus, but it also brought awareness to the fact that childcare is important. I mean, when we are looking right now at, first of all, childcare is essential. We're the first responders to the first responders. When the pandemic started and everybody closed their doors, North Bay stayed open, and I worked very closely with the county office, the emergency services for the county of Marin and Sonoma County, to keep our doors open to provide childcare for our medical first responders children. I mean, we needed them. We needed them in the hospitals. We needed everybody. It was all hands on deck, and everybody had young children. Their schools were closed. Childcare was closed, and obviously we stayed open because I wanted to make sure that we could do that for our community. But I also knew if we closed our doors and furloughed our teachers, we'd never get them back. We would have such a difficult time reopening. And sure enough, our nation lost over 50% of our licensed childcare capacity during COVID. So now, childcare is already a fragile system prior to COVID. And now we're trying to reopen. Businesses want their employees back on site, and people are scrambling. Their childcare is no longer there. So the pandemic did shine a light on the importance of this industry, the fragility of this industry. And I think that helped in my fundraising for this new campus to, not just reopen, but to build even more capacity was certainly important and in the spotlight. And because of the need for the nation to rebuild childcare, that came with federal dollars, new monies that we were able to secure for this project that weren't available before. But thanks to the infrastructure, our state infrastructure grant to rebuild childcare and other federal dollars, we've been able to get very close to that deadline. Or get it across the finish line. Yeah. There's no deadline. It's a moving deadline. It's a moving goalpost. But we're there. We're almost there. We could see the end now, and it really, once it's complete, this is going to be a national model for best practices in childcare and environmental education.
Oh, you must be super proud. Super proud. So a lot of what you've talked about includes partnerships, right, and collaboration. Could you speak a little bit about why that's required and how somebody who's thinking about doing something in the education space might go about beginning to bring together their own collaborative partners?
Collaboration is key, and you can't. I couldn't do something like this alone. It really is understanding who all the stakeholders are and being able to collaborate with the school districts and the business community. When I look at, what it is that we're doing, we're providing, again, this important service for our current workforce. So this is a workforce that, and again, for North Bay Children's Center, the majority of the families we serve are low income, and there are essential employees. They're the backbone of our community. They are working in retail, restaurant, hotel, vineyards, and they are able to live and work here because they have affordable childcare. And then, so we're addressing what this workforce currently needs and what their employers need for them, while preparing their children to be academically successful. They'll be able to start school, they'll be able to finish high school, they'll be able to go to college or trade school, they will be able to earn a living wage and break that cycle of poverty in their family. And so who are all the stakeholders around that, and how do we get them engaged in what it is that we're doing and partnering with us? And again, the business and community is so important because they truly do benefit from having childcare programs like the North Bay Children's Center so that their employees could go to work.
Exactly.
And in fact, it's really amazing. Up in Sonoma County, we just passed Measure I, which is a quarter-cent sales tax that's going to raise money to invest in the early care and education system in Sonoma County, because we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough space to build capacity, and that was driven by, again, this was our employer-driven and led campaign that where the work that our local employers are really understanding how important it is. When they think about education, they usually think of college. They think of they think of K-12, but now the 0 to 5 age group is definitely on everybody's radar screen. And
well, speaking of that, in addition to all of the other areas where you are addressing a need, you also have a very appropriately named, very cute name. I love the name of the program having to do with better food understanding.
The Garden of Eden, yes. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is kind of like one of the crown jewel in the crown of the North Bay Children's Center is the Garden of Eden program. So I started this program almost 20 years ago, my team. The idea was to teach children and families where food comes from. So we live in this amazing agriculturally rich environment. It's just so beautiful, and we have abundance of everything we want in the way of fresh produce. And for so many of these families, their food comes through the car window in a bag with a toy. And it's like, okay, we have a captive audience. We have children year round. We serve them breakfast, lunch, and snacks every day while they're with us. And they're learning to eat. They're 6 weeks old when they start our program. So they're tasting their first solid foods that they're tasting. It's with us. And so we can really control what those taste buds are going to like and what they're going to become addicted to. And it's either going to be sugars, salts, and fats, or it's going to be fresh produce. And those preferences are determined by age 3. So we, the funding came from First 5 Marin to launch this project. And I was preparing the grant. It's like the night before it's due, and it needed a name. So Garden of Eden will be eating out of the Garden of Eden. So I had no idea when I was choosing the name for this project, that it would become a national model. So we fast forward, we get the funding. I go online to find other programs that have a similar program, and it's all K-12. It's not the 0 to 5 age group. And so, again, it's that piece of innovation where if it doesn't exist and we know what it's supposed to look like, let's create it. So we had a nutritionist that we hired from Head Start, a master gardener to work with our program staff, our leadership team, and we created a curriculum designed specifically for the 0 to 5 age group that incorporates health and nutrition into the daily activities of our programs. And so we, a couple of years ago, well, when the pandemic started, one of our consultants called me and said, you know, we have a program in Southern California that wants to buy your curriculum. It's like, well, I don't know what that looks like. It's all up here. It's about? In binders. It's in file folders. It's in the head. You know, we have a five-person team, our Garden of Eden team, that works with our teachers, and you know, they do the school gardens, and they do the activities in the classrooms of the teachers and kids. But it was during the pandemic, and the garden team couldn't be in the classroom. It was the only people allowed in the classrooms during the pandemic were just the teachers. And so anybody else, any other specialists or anybody that we work with couldn't be with kids in the classroom as a way to minimize the spread of germs. So it gave me something to do with this team to keep them busy. And so we formalized our curriculum, and we licensed it. And so we created a portal, we created all the materials in English and Spanish, and so we licensed this curriculum, and now we are selling the license to different childcare programs up and down California. We're in Kentucky. We're part of a pilot project in Kentucky for the Appalachian Family Child Care Providers. And so this is something that we're traveling to Kentucky, and we are also in Uganda, thanks to one of our advisory board members who was going on a humanitarian trip to Uganda and learned that they were going to be in schools teaching health and nutrition. And so he purchased licenses for 4 schools in Uganda. And luckily they speak English in Uganda, so it all works. The time difference is tricky for our Zoom trainings, et cetera, but we've really, it's not anything I ever imagined. People always say, well, you're so visionary. It's like, I didn't imagine any of this.
Didn't come once to me in a dream.
We're just going with it. But I think that's what's so important, is to be able to, pivot and see what's changing in our communities, what's impacting our children and families, and how does North Bay Children's Center help? How do we address what those needs are that are forever changing in our communities?
What would you share with that next generation of leaders, female leaders, who aspired to get into the line of work that you're in? Into the education? What would you prepare them with, your little words of wisdom?
Absolutely follow your heart and your passion. And to do something like I've done, it has been such a huge commitment to a vision that I hold so strongly. And to be persistent and be a voice at the table. Your ideas are great ideas. Your vision is, let's try that. Let's, you could do this. You could do this. I mean, when I look back at, I definitely had encouragement from other female leaders, in my industry for sure. And I would say find somebody who believes in you. Find your mentor, find the person that you want to be like, that you envision getting behind you and supporting you, and just do it. But it takes time. And I know there's so many hurdles. And when I think about describing what we went through just to get the land or just to do this or that, it wasn't a cakewalk at all. And it really, every time I was in a situation where I would be, I don't know how to do this, I would find someone who does. Someone who's willing to step in and say, okay, I could help you with this. And I was really young. I mean, I was 28 years old when I started North Bay Children's Center. And so I have tremendous deference to our board of directors, because had it not been for our board during some really difficult times and their leadership, I wouldn't be here. And I've learned so much from them and what they bring to the table. So really surrounding yourself by people who can build you up and get you across the finish line. And for me, I think if you tell me no, or that's not possible, then that's all I need to hear. Yeah, it's game on. It's like, okay, then I'm definitely going to get this done.
Outstanding.
So, yeah.
Notwithstanding that your programs cover a lot of different geographic areas, specifically as you look to the future for Marin County, what do you envision as it relates to childcare and North Bay Children's Center's impact in Marin County?
Well, I definitely look at our biggest challenge right now, like many other companies in the North Bay, is workforce. And so what are we going to do about that? How are we going to attract people into this field? Where are we going to get our teachers from? And so that, when we talk about collaboration, it really is, right now we're collaborating with College of Marin and Community Action Marin on an apprenticeship program where we are able to support and fast track those who are interested in this field to get the degrees and to get the permits that they need to be teachers, and provide that level of support, and that is really critical. So building our workforce, you're going to hear, we hear workforce housing all the time, but that's real, and that's something that I'm excited to see some of our school districts, like Nevada Unified School District is actually working on this right now. You look at, districts as they're consolidating, moving schools around. That's where some of the surplus land is right now in the county. And I admire Nevada Unified School District for taking some of that surplus land and looking at workforce housing and being able to ensure that childcare is part of that our teachers are part of that workforce is really important. And everything that we're doing for young children, it's the right thing to do, and it shouldn't be so hard. And it shouldn't be on the backs, paying for childcare shouldn't be on the backs of teachers who are subsidized in the field by accepting a low wage, and parents can't afford to pay any more than they're already paying. And it really does require government support to do it right. And so I'm hoping that what Sonoma County just did with Measure I is something that Marin County may relook at, because I know we did we went out for a tax in 2016 and very close to that passing. And I do believe that it's time to rally around and look at that again. We're not sure what's going to happen over the next 4 years with federal funding for education. I look at everything as an opportunity. So what can happen, and how do we rally our community and ensure that infrastructure to support early care and education is vibrant and doing well in Marin County.
It's amazing. So as our conversation comes to a close, is there any final thoughts, words of wisdom, encouragement, call to action that you would like to share with our audience?
I think the call to action is, be involved. So how can you be involved? You can volunteer in in childcare programs. You can be on a board. Again, that's where I learned all of the amazing skills that I have right now are from extraordinary volunteers who served over the years on our board of directors. Be a donor if you can. Invest and help this industry stabilize and grow. And if you are looking for anything specific, there's always the North Bay Children's Center. And I would love to, we're so excited about this new facility because it is going to be a national model. And I'm already giving tours. The construction crew, I'm driving them crazy because I brought my 94-year-old mother and her friend through the other day, and they're looking at me like, really? But I can't wait to just show everybody what we've accomplished and what's possible, and what's going to happen for these children in our future. So thank you.
Thank you. You are an amazing force to be reckoned with, and you've done such wonderful work for our communities and helping you're changing the dynamics of another generation. So thank you very much, Susan, for that.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's great chatting with you.
It's fun. Once again, thank you, Susan Gilmore, for sharing stories of your incredible life with us. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. The Marin Women's Hall of Fame is a project of the YWCA Golden Gate Silicon Valley. If you would like to learn more about the Hall of Fame and our extraordinary honorees, please visit www.yourywca.org.